This is Cigar Reflections, a podcast on faith, hope, love, and healing, with just a touch on cigars. I'm your host, Dave, aka Graybeard. Welcome. Welcome to episode number 4 of Discovering Your Identity. In the previous episodes, we have gone over eliminating the validation seeker. It's okay to not be okay, and how we traverse the grief process, understanding that it's not a linear process, understanding that emotions are real, but they're not fact, and what our core emotions are, and what our surface level emotions are, and what's the core that causes these, what's the underlining. Well, in this episode, we're going to go on to the next step, which really is kind of not even kind of, it's actually probably the hardest step, and that's identifying and understanding what it is that we can control. This has been more of a challenge for me, because as I've been going over what it is that I wanted to talk with you about in this episode, I've been identifying areas of my life where I'm trying to control the wrong thing. And see, here's where it gets difficult, because we have been taught all of our lives that there's many things that we can control. And in fact, if you look in abusive relationships, those relationships come down to the abuser wanting to control the abusee. And generally, because they have been controlled, or they feel a lack of control, or they feel a loss of control. And there's an old saying that you can't control the cards you're dealt, but you can control how you play them. And that's true, but let's change the word cards and use that areas of our lives. See, we can't control what happens in our life. We can't control the weather. We can't control whether or not our boss is in a good mood. We can't control whether or not our wife, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, our husband are in good moods. Now, we can do things to influence those, but in the end, we can't control those. We can't control whether or not we go out to our car and the battery starts. I mean, it happens at times where you go out there and you've done everything right. You've made sure that your maintenance is up to date, and that you go out there and the car won't start. It could be the battery. It could have been that the alternator had just decided to go out. It could be that the battery is just old and doesn't have the amp powers that it needs to be able to turn over in the dead of winter. You can't control these different situations that happen. But what we can control in our lives, however, is our reactions. And believe it or not, that's the only thing that we can control. We can't control if we get that promotion. We can't control whether or not our boss decides that he just doesn't like us anymore and wants to just put all of the loads of his day on us. We can't control whether or not we come home and our wife is in a good mood, our spouse is in a good mood, the house is clean, we got a pay raise, we got a pat on the back when we so desired one. We can't control any of those situations. But what we can control is how we react to it. Let's say, let's talk about this particular scenario, okay? You go into the office, you've worked really hard on this presentation, and you deliver the presentation, and everything just seemed to just hit just right. You hit all of your key notes. The audience was engaged. You had good questions. You were able to answer the questions clear and concisely. And you close up the presentation, and your CEO goes, okay, thank you, but we're not interested. This was a waste of our time. I'm sorry. We're done. Completely different response than what you were expecting, especially because you thought that everything was just clicked just perfectly. Now, you can choose to react with anger. You can choose to react beaten down, and I wouldn't be surprised if you did. You can choose to react of, I'm just going to blow this off and not take it seriously. You can choose to react by going to your CEO and asking him where you missed out, what was wrong. Or let's say another situation, you just had a series of bad things that happened. You know, a friend may have passed away. Your day just started off on the wrong foot. You went out and your tires were flat, and you were running late, and you had to replace the tires. And you went to work, and you were just in a bad mood. And it wasn't anybody else's fault. Wasn't even really your fault. It was just something that happened. Now, you can choose to react while you're at work in a way that you're allowing a bad start to the day impact you and how you treat your fellow employees, how you talk, whether or not you're approachable or not. All of that is a choice, and it's a reaction to what has happened before, or to a circumstance has happened, or to a situation that has happened. Everything in our life is a reaction, and that reaction is ours to control and is ours to choose how we want to react to a particular situation. And there's a phrase that goes around, especially in the cigar community, of no F's given. And you can, if you don't know what that means, you can figure it out. I'm not going to spell out the words here on this broadcast. But that whole mindset is that you're not going to allow anything affect how you feel and how you react. Understand that that's easy to say, and it's harder to do. But if you think about the concepts of it, we don't allow situations, circumstances, things that happen in our life control how we react. We assess a situation, and usually what I try to talk with people about is look at the situation, okay? Does it impact my family? Positive or negatively? Does it impact my physical and mental well-being, positively or negatively? Does it impact my financial well-being, positively or negatively? Now, if the answer is to yes to any of those, then come back with a follow-up question of, can I do anything about it? If the answer is yes, then make a plan and execute that plan. If the answer is no to that follow-up, then let it go. Or if the answer was no to any of those prior situations, those first questions, then let those go. Don't give those power to control how you feel. Don't give those power to control how you react. Don't give those power to dictate how you react. Okay, so this is really easy to say, right? Well, this is one of the hardest things to do. And when I started out this episode, I had mentioned how I was finding some areas in my life where I still react the wrong way. I still have tendencies where I react to my kids the wrong way. In a way a button is pushed, and I may react in anger with a temper. I react to, asking someone out on a date and being told no the wrong way. And that wrong way being that I am thinking that there's something wrong about me, that I didn't measure up, I wasn't good enough. And that's the wrong way to react, as opposed to, hey, she just didn't want to go out, or, she doesn't think of me that way and just wants to be friends, or what have you. It doesn't matter. And I shouldn't give those power to control how I feel or what I think about myself. And that's my choice. So I'm working on this. Now, other areas of my life, like being told that my contract is not being renewed, I react to that differently now than what I had before, because I'm not worried about it. Now, for me personally, these are areas that I've given over to God, and I trust in Him and partnering with Him on the next stages of my life. Have I done that in all areas of my life? No. I'm human. Now, that doesn't mean that that's an excuse, but that does mean that that is a reason, that is something that I'm working on and struggling with, and continue fighting to be a better man in those areas. And I go to God, and ask for His strength and ask for His guidance, and take action based upon that guidance, and continually lean into Him to check for that guidance along the way. I am working to control what I can control, and that is how I react. And this is not a one and done thing. This is a minute by minute by minute thing. Now, if we take a look at, by learning how to do that, then we can come back to the eliminating the validation seeker in our lives, to where we're no longer coming and looking for validation, because we are reacting to the situation more positively and saying, I don't need that pat on the back. I'm not going to search or seek for that pat on the back. And we can go through the grieving process and the hurt process, because controlling how we react doesn't mean that we're not going to feel. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be hurt. That doesn't mean that any of that's not going to happen. It's not like we've got this protective barrier around us that it prevents everything from coming through and giving us reasons to feel down, to feel sad, to feel happy, to feel mad, to feel angry, to feel betrayed. But what it does mean is that now we have a tool set to know how to not live there. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to experience a variety of emotions of both major ups and downs. But what it does mean, by learning how to control that, which we can control, which is our reaction, means that we're going to have greater skills and tools to learn how to identify the core that caused that emotion and address that emotion. So what I want to challenge you to do is to grab that journal that we talked way back in episode 1. Grab that journal, and as you have different situations happen to you, write down how you react. Journal it. My coworker was just in a bad mood and just berated me up one side and right back down the other side, and I reacted accordingly in anger. Somebody came by and smiled at me, and because I was in a bad mood, I reacted by not smiling and saying hello and just grumbling as I walked on by. Identify our reactions and note which reactions that we need to, or we should, or we could improve on? And which reactions do we need to continue on and seeing where there was a blessing that we had in our life or a blessing that we helped share in somebody else's lives? Journal this. Write it down. Come back later and look at it. See where you can do to improve and strengthening and grow in this tool set of learning how to control that which you can control, which is only our reactions. I hope you've enjoyed this series so far, and I would really, really encourage you to make sure that you come back with the next episode where we bring this series to a conclusion of finding your identity. One thing that we all want to do is to figure out who we are, find our identity. How will we be described? So please make sure you come back. And if you're enjoying these series, which I really hope you are, I would encourage you to click follow, click subscribe on whatever platform it is that you listen on. And if you have any comments, please post those comments in the platform, and I would love to come back and have a talk with you on this, and just to read your comments. So until next week, I'm Graybeard, and this has been Cigar Reflections. Okay, yeah, that. Okay, now, so that was kind of a difficult episode to record. I'm telling you, having that self-reflection of where it is that we need to grow in our own lives is not easy. So tonight, I am finishing this one off with a cigar from Crossfire. This is a Christian-owned cigar company, and had them on my other show, YouTube show that I do with a very good friend of mine. It's called The Twisted Pear, part of our company called Leaf and Grain Society. And what I'm going to be smoking tonight is a Crossfire Habano. Now, this is a Dominican Republic cigar, but the Habano is out of Honduras and has, I know right off the bat, it's going to be some nice, creamy, kind of like that vanilla, buttery, creamy type notes. Really looking forward to this. Just sit back and relax based on what we just talked about and how I can continue growing in my own life.
For a long time, I prayed for things in my life to change, for situations to change, only to find them to stay exactly the same. No changes that I saw. Well, my disappointment grew into bitterness that I hid away. Trust withered until one day I did further research. My mind and my disappointments were blown away at the truth that I found. Well, I put all of this together in a course that I'm offering you for a donation of any amount. I want you to see prayers answered. So let's shred some untruths. Let's get truth from the Word of God together. Let's gain revelation knowledge and grow in spiritual intelligence and walk in victory today. You can find a link to this course in the show notes below, but you can always find all links on kellypope.com. This has been a production of K2 Media.